The original Advance Wars released on the Game Boy Advance back in 2001 in the US and 2002 in Europe, and was Nintendo's first attempt at bringing their long-running Wars series to the West. A sequel followed in 2003 and the series gained quite a following, with its success said to have had a bearing on Nintendo bringing another similar series, Fire Emblem, across to the West too. The first two games have been remade and bundled together in this Reboot Camp edition. But Advance Wars, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing? Well, thank you to Nintendo for the review code, and now, let's find out. The story begins with you in charge of the Orange Star Army who find themselves at war with the Blue Moon. Things escalate and further factions get involved, and this story carries into the second game, which is included here too, of course. And the second game is in fact greyed out when you first begin the game, not because you can't play it, you can play it at any time, but just to warn you of spoilers if you play that game first. For that reason, I will be showing very little footage of the second game and focusing mainly on the first game for the purposes of this review. So gameplay wise, both games are turn-based strategy affairs with a top-down perspective. In campaign mode, you will engage in missions against a commanding officer or CO from the opposing army with your starting position and troops laid out on the map as you start. From here you will take it in turns to advance towards the opposition, with each unit having a set number of squares it's able to move and a particular firing range, as well as some units being stronger or weaker against others. You will begin with basic ground units such as infantry and tanks before unlocking recon, missiles, rockets, as well as both air and sea units as you get further into the game, and you will also gain access to bases where you can build new unit types to give you an advantage over the enemy, with money to do so coming from the number of cities you capture on the map, but be aware that your opponent will be attempting to do the same thing. Generally, the aim of each mission is to either destroy all enemy units or to capture their base, although there are a few with more specific victory conditions. You are eased into the game at a decent pace with new units added in the first few missions. The gameplay is fairly simplistic, but the design of each mission is incredibly tight, and this is where the depth and need for strategy comes in. There are missions where strategy can come second, just bombarding the enemy with sheer force of numbers, but that isn't always the case, and some of the best victories are the ones where you have a plan, and whilst there are a few hairy moments, it does ultimately come off. Aside from this though, you do have the aforementioned commanding officers that all have a unique skill that can be used when their CO bar is full. Across the campaign you'll have access to 3 of these COs, but it's also about the COs you come up against. You'll be thinking about how to use the skills that yours have and when to use them to get the best out of them, with the first one you get access to being a health boost to your units, but learning what the opposition can do is where things really get interesting. Again, an early one can make it snow, which affects the distance your troops can travel, or there's another that can have 2 turns in one go, which can really blow your plans out of the water if you're not ready for it. It's a simple premise, but it does add a lot of depth to the game, and the core gameplay holds up incredibly well to this day. As you gain access to further COs, sometimes the mission path will branch out depending on who you choose for a particular mission, which does lead to a little replayability on a second playthrough. The sequel, Black Hole Rising, is very similar for the most part, but does have a couple of additions. There are more COs introduced with their own skills, a tweak to the CO bar which allows you to use your skill to a varying degree of strength, and a new unit in the Neo Tank, but generally it is pretty much more of the same. Outside of the campaign modes for the respective games though, there is also an online multiplayer mode, as well as a local mode which gives options for playing on one Switch or multiple Switches, provided everyone has a copy of the game for that particular option. The biggest issue with this is, as far as I can see, you can only play online with friends, which is a huge missed opportunity. In terms of the local options, playing on one Switch is functional enough, but you can obviously both see the same screen, which hampers the enjoyment for any maps with a Fog of War feature. There is also the option to create your own maps, and you can then send these to any friends you have on your Switch, and you can use the coins you earn from success in campaign mode to purchase new maps and COs to use in multiplayer mode from the in-game shop. In terms of controls, it's easy enough to navigate the battlefield, and everything to moving troops or creating new units is quick and efficient. I did find it odd that the touchscreen is not implemented for handheld play, as it would seem like an obvious addition to these new versions of the game, but there is no such option. Gameplay holds up very well and is a good mix of a simple premise which is much deeper than you'd initially realise. The online only being available with friends is a misstep in my opinion, but gameplay gets 19 out of 20. Controls are sound, although the omission of touchscreen is a little strange, and they get 17 out of 20. So onto the visuals then, and as soon as the opening cutscene plays you can definitely see Way Forward's influence on this remake. The hand-drawn style, which aside from that opening segment is also used for character models and portraits, does work well, and it's nice to see these 20-year-old characters brought to life in such a style. The graphics used for the actual gameplay though is a 3D take on the old pixel art, and this was my biggest concern when this remake was first announced. I felt that the battle animations looked a little cheap on first viewing, and having now played a large amount of the game, the style has definitely grown on me, and it does look better than the promotional material suggested. The individual animations of each unit add some character, and the explosions are of a good standard, and whilst I think I would have preferred a hand-drawn style here too, it does work on the whole. The maps are very bright and vibrant and have the feel of a tabletop map brought to life. Audio wise, again the music has received an update with the tone shifting as each CO takes their turn. There is some voice acting, usually for keywords or phrases during cutscenes, which is just about enough to emphasise important moments. Battle sounds are as you would expect and add to the on-screen action. Visuals may split opinion due to the new style, and I do feel as if some of the charm has been lost, but what's here in isolation does the job well enough. They get 16 out of 20. Audio always suits the on-screen action, and the shift between turns keeps things fresh. It gets 17 out of 20. Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp costs £49.99 and regional equivalents are on your screen now. For this price you get 2 games of course, and the newly added online mode, as well as the local modes, although these aren't quite as accessible. On the GBA, multiplayer could take place on 2 separate machines with just one game via the link cable, but in this day and age there is no such thing, and it's a shame that 2 copies are now needed to get full use out of this aspect. That being said, there is a lot of content here for your money, and it has received the full remake treatment of course, and it's nice to see the gameplay hold up as well as it does. Whether the new art style is a huge improvement or not is up for debate, but it's certainly a well polished game, and on the whole value gets 15 out of 20. To conclude, as someone who bought the original Advance Wars on a whim at an airport during the early 2000s, it's really lovely to see just how well the gameplay holds up some 20 years later. Yes, Nintendo's ports and remakes, Metroid Prime aside, are overpriced, but at least this time you are getting 2 games for your money, albeit they are very similar with just a few revisions in that sequel. If you enjoy tactical strategy games and have never tried this series, don't be put off by the cartoony look, as there is a deep and challenging game under the surface, and it'll be interesting to see if a positive reaction to this release will lead to a new Switch specific game in the future. Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp gets a SwitchUp score of 84%. Thank you everybody for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. Don't forget, if you are looking for eShop credit to pick up this game or any other game for that matter, you can do so via our website switchup.gg. You can earn yourself points on all of your purchases there, which you can then redeem in the future against later purchases. There's also a link down there to Play Asia if you're looking to import any games. Use the link, use the code stated, and you can get yourself 5% off of your order. A quick thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.